was going to talk to you today about one of my favourite street photography hacks. I've just arrived in London. I don't think it's going to work today. I'm going to tell you about it anyway. One day it'll be useful. It's going to cause me trouble, that is. that is not good news. I've got a Hasselblad store coming to London. I know, you have enough of my money. You know. I spotted this Rolls Royce parked here and the guy was faffing around in the back of the car, which I quite like, so I managed to take a quick snap. I've got that orange line coming into the corner of the door and being orange and his backside sticking out of the thing, which kind of looks a little bit funny, a little bit odd at the same time. The only thing is I was focused at infinity. I hadn't adjusted the focus point quick enough, so I'm not sure because I'm at f11 whether that will be sharp, probably not. But it's one of those things with street photography, isn't it? It's allowed. Well, that's not something you see every day, is it? Two bears having a teddy bear's picnic, but no, teddy bear's dinner. I always go on about how important it is to master your camera, own your camera settings, understand what's going on with your camera, understand what all your variables are doing, not just your exposure triangle, but your focal length, your focus zone, and all that sort of stuff as well, your histogram. So I always go on about that, and it takes some time to get used to. But your exposure compensation dial is one of the ones you need to be able to master. Really, really powerful facility on your camera. And a lot of people, especially on my workshops, don't know how to use it. Now, if you're a manual only shooter, if you only shoot in manual, then obviously the exposure compensation dial ain't going to work. It doesn't do anything unless you assign it to something else. But what the camera doesn't know is it doesn't know if you're shooting in a dark environment. Like now, I'm wearing a black hoodie, and that's a dark wall, and that's a dark wall. And I've not set this video camera to shoot minus 0.5 or 0.1 one-stop exposure compensation. So the video camera doesn't know that that's supposed to be a black wall, or I'm supposed to be wearing a black hoodie. It's probably balanced because of that white sky up there. That white sky is probably balancing the exposure. In the video, I didn't actually explain this bit very well, so let's give it another go. In the video, we're using the Leica Q2, and as you can see at the top, there is no markings on the compensation dial, which is there. So with the camera off, you have no idea where your exposure is. So if you're anticipating a photograph, if you see a black wall and you think, oh, that would be really cool, let's walk up to that. You have to switch the camera and wait for the back of the camera to actually show you where the metering is. So there is no way of knowing without switching the camera and where the metering is. So that's a bugbear with the Sony, but you know there's workarounds. You just got to remember where your exposure was when you've turned the camera off to save battery. On the Fuji, we've got this lovely compensation dial, so I can adjust on the fly as I want to there. So that's really, really good. For the other day, I was photographing in a concert. So when I went to this from the fans section to the stage section, I could just whack that to -2 on both my cameras. I had 3 cameras at the time, so I can whack the exposure down to -2, and then hopefully the Fuji and the Sony, which I was shooting with at the time, their exposure meter catches up quickly enough, because all these cameras are what they call ISO invariant. So that means I can use -2 on this camera and -2 on any of these cameras, and it'll look quite dark in the camera, but I'll get these really, really nice silhouette effects and stuff like that. So underexposing by 2 is a really, really good way of getting nice silhouette and interesting arty effects. So if you ever wanted to know how to do that, -2 is the way to go. But because they're ISO invariant, if the stage lighting goes bang, or if somebody walks through a scene and the light catches them and it's a bit dark, I can brighten them up in post as if they were shot at a higher ISO. Because they're ISO invariant, it doesn't matter that the ISO is too low. As long as it's above ISO 400 on the Fuji, the Leica, and the Sony, you can actually brighten it in post, and it doesn't make that much difference. Alan Wallace, bless him, did a really, really good video on ISO invariant, so check that out. But the hack part of it comes into you knowing your environment. So if you live in Norway or something, when you're surrounded by snow, then I imagine that you're always going to be above 0 you get away with 0, but above 0. So if you, as I said in the video, if you're surrounded by snow, you're going to need to know when it's going to be largely a white environment. Whereas in the UK, where it's wearing black and it's all grungy and dark and miserable all the damn time, then obviously we've got a lot of black buildings, a lot of dark environments and things like that. So largely, I'm just going to be going down to sort of -1, minus maybe 2. Obviously on the Sony, I normally use the Sony fully manual. So the exposure compensation dial, which again isn't labelled, that really doesn't do anything. The only time that does something is if I'm manual aperture, manual shutter speed, but the ISO is on auto. If I then adjust the compensation dial, it's going to change the ISO only. So that's just obviously a different way of using the camera, but if I'm using flash or something like that, then the Sony's in fully manual. So anyway, we'll get back to the video. Try and anticipate your environment. Try and gauge if you're trying to, especially if you want to work with silhouettes and shadows, and it's a dark environment with really strong contrasty light coming through. Experiment with it. Look at the histogram. Try and get familiar with where your exposure compensation dial needs to be. Because if you get back and often look at your images in Lightroom and they always look a little bit bright, then that could be why. So it's worth a go, especially if you've got a Leica, Fuji or Sony. Do check out, see if your camera's got ISO invariance, because it's an extremely powerful tool. I use it all the time. I wouldn't buy a camera without it. Anyway, let's get back to the video. But don't assume, one of the biggest mistakes people make is that when your exposure compensation is set to 0 on your camera, don't assume that's correct, because the camera doesn't know what you're photographing. For example, if you went to the Arctic, I always use this example, if you went to the Antarctic or something like that, photograph polar bears in the snow, and your camera is set to 0 on compensation, all your pictures in the snow are going to be grey, because the camera doesn't know that you're photographing a white environment. A polar bear in the snow is going to be underexposed. So you would have to tell your camera with the compensation dial that actually no, that's a white object in a white environment. So you'd have to turn your compensation dial up to +2. Obviously keeping an eye on the histogram, allowing a little bit on the histogram. Shooting raw is always the best option, because you'd be able to tell by looking at the histogram of the photographs. Even if you couldn't see the photograph, you'd be able to tell just by looking at the histogram there's a lump in the middle on a polar bear in the snow where the exposure should be all the way to the right. The only way you're going to get that is by pushing the exposure compensation. So with street photography, it's kind of the opposite. I don't know where I'm going. Not that don't suppose it matters. It's the opposite, because we've got dark buildings around me. I'm wearing dark clothing. So if I was pointing the camera at me against a black wall at 0, the camera's going to think I'm wearing 20% grey, because it thinks everything is kind of like pavement colour. If we turn grass black and white, it thinks everything's that tone. The camera might get it right. It might look a bit dark or whatever. It might have been fine. But then if somebody walks into the frame, or if we catch some light or something like that, the chances you clipping that person or that white element is massive, unless you anticipate that and underexpose. Especially with the Leica, because I've not found the Leica's metering to be as good as the Fuji or the Sony. So with the Leica, because I know I can brighten it up in post loads, I've underexposed pretty much since the day I've got the camera. There aren't many photographs I've taken on the Leica where I've left it at 0 on the compensation. I've always had it at -1. Again, if I do find, this is just me because I err on the side of caution, but if I do find a really dark environment where there's really strong light coming through and I want to meter for the person that hits the light, not the black, then I might go to -2, because I know I'm still only going to come up 1 stop in Lightroom. And obviously any camera for the last 5 or so years is more than capable of that. Which way should we go? Let's go this way. Most cameras these days, you can edit a RAW file to an inch of its life, so definitely having 1 stop of compensation to deal with in Lightroom is not going to be a problem. That histogram looks kind of right, even though I'm underexposed by 1 stop. So it's a really good starting place. It doesn't help the fact that, in my opinion, the Leica can't meter for toffee, but more reason for me to use it with this thing. So it's a really important hack, but you need to know when and where to use it. The light's nice here on this, but a really contrasty. Good example of, I'm actually at -2 on the Leica now because of the black is throwing off the meter. That's what I was on about knowing when to use this. I mean, even when if I show you the log footage from the back of the Osmo, it actually looks like it's clipping the white area of the video camera. So I'm -2 on the Leica, and just keeping an eye on Sorry, dude.
Sorry, I didn't know you were speaking.
Hey, as long as you smile, you're great. So as people are coming through there, I'm trying to get it in single shot actually, but it's not easy. But you can see my histogram's way under. But the histogram's only way under when there's no one there. When somebody comes into the light, that histogram's going to change because they are going to catch the light. Oh, the light's going? No, no, no. So obviously the subject doesn't work here. The subject don't work there, but oh, do you know what? I need that corner right, don't I? So when the light was coming out and catching the person, they would have clipped they would have clipped by a mile if I wasn't on -2 on the camera. So again, just really, really good example of when and how powerful that is. But we need the light now. I've come further down now, and the composition is a lot cleaner because there's a lot less to get wrong. The lines are really, really nice where they're catching the light, but obviously the light isn't there now. I'm pre-focused at 2.5 meters. I want to show you, but somebody's definitely going to. So there. So between 2 and infinity, f11. And I know that if the light changes, if the sun comes out, the camera's going to adjust and allow for it. And I'm not going to clip because I am under by nearly 2 stops. You see on the left-hand side of the camera there, I'm nearly 2 stops under. I like that photograph, but I found a way of elevating, literally, the shot by lifting it up because there's this light on. That light there is catching here. I did actually originally spot a reflection of the people, but it looks quite cool with that light in the top left-hand third, bringing your eye down to the subject. I've got a few. The difficulty is where to focus. I'm nearly at infinity f8 now, so quite a difficult one. To really want an interesting subject. I did get a guy sort of running his fingers through his hair as he came around the corner there, which I think might work. Fingers crossed. That might be the shot so far. So what it gets you doing is it forces you to realise whether or not a scene is really bright or really dark. So as you're anticipating a photograph, you'll walk up to, it might be a dark wall, and you think, well, that wall's pitch black, so I'm underexposed by 1 stop, but I'm actually going to go underexposed by 2 stops because the wall's black. So you're underexposed for black, overexposed for white. And it just gets you seeing and anticipating, and it's another variable that you can really try and understand and master with your camera, that you haven't got to try and get back to your computer and think, oh, why are my photographs overexposed or whatever. The thing that inspires me with it though is that you'll see photographs on the back of your camera that the eye doesn't see, because the eye sees ridiculously a huge amount of dynamic range. So your camera, let's say, if it exposes, sees it's exposing for light and everything else goes to shade. Well, your eye sees so much detail in the shadows and in the highlights that a camera can't see. So when you take a photograph underexposed by 1 stop, God, it's getting hot now. When it's that's good news for this video. When you're underexposed by 1 stop, you'll see light and colour and shadow that you can't see with the human eye. You really have to say, flipping out, all that disappears. All that disappears completely. When you're underexposed. It's really inspiring in that respect. So it gets you thinking completely differently. It gives you the ability, the superpower to ignore things that are going on in the shadows. You think, oh, I like that photograph, but everything's going on in the shadow, so I don't like it. And it does give you that superpower because your eye would just see so much dynamic range. It's really, really handy for that. Because now it's gone flat. You don't need to. You could shoot this at 0 compensation, because there's no dynamic range whatsoever. The whole scene is really, really flat. It's slightly lighter on that back wall there, but only because it's white. But there's no chance of clipping anything around here. So, if you are enjoying this video and you're taking anything from it and you want to support the channel, I hope you are enjoying it. I don't think I've taken a decent photograph yet. It might not be you enjoying the pictures, but you can support the channel by downloading F8 magazine, which is my street photography magazine, which the whole point of it is actually to help people learn. So it's not just a load of pictures in a book. It is a load of pictures in a book. It's 48, I think it's 48-page book. We're on issue number 4 at the minute, and but each one of the images has got backstory behind the images, how the images can improve, the technical aspects of the photographs, how the technical aspects might have been wrong. Just basically scrutinise the crap out of all the images and help you guys get better. Even if you're a beginner street photography, well, in fact, especially if you're a beginner street photographer, it's a really, really powerful resource because it's honest. It's not just me showing a load of photographs and saying, look how good I am, sort of thing. In fact, it's the opposite. So if you want to support the channel, F8 Digital Magazine, and he tripped there on the curve. F8 Digital Magazine is a really, really cool way of doing so. And for everybody that's given me really kind feedback, we're on issue 4 at the minute. Everybody that's downloading, giving me nice feedback, I'm really, really grateful. I do mean it. It's really, really, really nice of you. So thanks so much. And obviously, without your guys' support, I wouldn't be able to make these videos. So yeah, do check out F8. Let's get back into it. That was pretty cool. Just bumped into Josh, Jack, and Mo. I can never remember Mo's surname.
Hello!
Oh, hello guys, right? Right, give up on that. I don't think the light's coming back, so I'm going to go back to my 1.5 metre f11, 500th of a second, and look for details close up because the light's just not coming back now. I think we've had it with the light. I'm going to give it beans for an hour on this street, looking for close-up details, and I might get on the train then. I've got my new ring on the front so we can take that off, and the man has very kindly gave me hot shoe cover. So for Leica shooters, that does protect it. If it's raining, you do need one of them on because the water sits in there, you said.
As long as the water sits, as long as the water doesn't sit on it, then it's fine.
Yeah, so brilliant. Appreciate it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks very much. That is the camera at 0, so the exposure compensation is at 0. And obviously I'm clipping the light, which isn't that big a deal here for this sort of photograph. So as long as you take ownership and you decide what you want to happen, you see the histogram's clipping a little bit. It doesn't need to happen, so if we just knock that down to -1, that's now protecting those highlights. And even on the video camera, the video looks much brighter than it needs to be. So 1250 ISO as opposed to 2500 ISO. So 1250 at let's go to -1, about where it needs to be. So it just saves us, it's not a great photograph, but it just saves us a bit of exposure. It's didn't like that photograph at all, but if you lift the camera up there by the ceiling, you get some cool reflections off the ceiling and stuff there. SD card full. First time I've ever filled an SD card. So I'm going to take that as my permission to go and put my feet up somewhere. I could delete a few. To be honest with you, I normally got a spare card, but I haven't got my bag with me. I didn't want to bring the bag, so yeah, I'm going to end it there and just go and chill my boots, get something to eat, and relax. As I say, I've got an important day tomorrow. But I hope you found this video useful. It's definitely something you need to be aware of. Don't always think that because your exposure compensation is on 0, that means the camera is going to know it's right. Just know when to use it. Know when to use it's -2. Know when to use it's +2. That sort of thing. So hopefully giving you a few good examples. I don't think I've taken any photographs that are particularly creative in this video. Maybe I'll float one. I don't think I have. But it was nice to bump into the people that come and say hello anyway. So hopefully, forget out. It's like this in London all the time. If you did enjoy the channel, obviously check out F8. It's huge support for the channel. Really, really appreciate anybody downloading that. Really means a lot. Let me know the feedback on the magazine if you have downloaded it already. Not arrogant enough to not accept feedback, good or bad. It's okay. Bring it on. Let's make that magazine as good as it possibly can be. Anyway, till the next one, let's go and find a pint. See you again, guys.